Every night after artificial dusk, a note appeared outside my door. No cameras recorded it. No sensors detected movement. According to the station logs, no one had been there at all. And yet someone was watching me. Before I realized it, that unseen someone had done the most dangerous thing possible in the universe. They had gotten used to me. The first note arrived on a night when the station's artificial dusk flickered twice, like it was reconsidering the concept of evening. I noticed it only because I was arguing with my kettle, which had decided that boiling water was a suggestion rather than an instruction. When I opened the door to let out steam and disappointment, there it was on the floor, folded with unnecessary precision, as if it had been trained by someone who folded paper for a living or feared uneven edges more than vacuum exposure. I stared at it for a long moment, waiting for it to scuttle away. The station had a known problem with semi-sentient maintenance drones, and one of them had once tried to invoice me emotionally. When the paper remained stubbornly paper, I picked it up. The handwriting was neat, careful, almost anxious. "Good evening. I believe this is where you reside. I apologize if this is incorrect. Please ignore this message if you are not you." I laughed, which startled me because I hadn't laughed out loud in days. I read on. "I am conducting an informal study on human habits. You appear consistent. That is admirable. Tonight you consumed rehydrated noodles at 19. 4 and sighed 3 times. The second sigh seemed unnecessary." I checked the corridor, half expecting a camera to wave at me. Nothing. The station hummed, pretending not to listen. I finished the note, which ended with, "I hope your kettle learns obedience. Good night." I did what any reasonable human would do when confronted with anonymous observational humor in deep space. I checked my kettle for bugs, then checked myself for bugs, then laughed again because the idea of someone spying on me long enough to count my size was somehow flattering and deeply concerning. The next night, another note appeared. This one apologized for the previous note's tone, and then apologized for apologizing. It mentioned the stars outside the station viewport and described them incorrectly, which I only noticed because I'd made the same mistake my first week here and been corrected by an AI with the personality of a disappointed librarian. I wrote a reply on the back, mostly because it felt rude not to. "Dear mysterious scientist," I wrote, "thank you for the concern. The kettle remains defiant. Your star is actually a fuel depot. Easy mistake. Please don't count my size. It adds pressure." I left it outside my door, feeling ridiculous, and slept better than I had in weeks. From then on, the notes came nightly. Sometimes they were observations, sometimes questions. Sometimes they were jokes that landed slightly off, like a meteor missing a planet by a hair and still calling it a success. One asked why humans put pictures of other humans in frames, as if afraid they might escape. Another wondered if humor was a survival trait or a malfunction. I answered when I could, and when I couldn't, I still found myself smiling at the careful loops of the handwriting. Whoever she was, because it became clear quickly that she was a she was shy in a way that felt almost old-fashioned, like privacy preserved intentionally instead of by accident. She never signed her notes. She never asked to meet. Once, when I joked about setting a chair outside my door so she wouldn't have to crouch, the next note arrived flustered, the letters pressed too hard into the paper. "I am quite capable of standing. Also, I do not crouch." That made me laugh so hard the station lights dimmed in sympathy. The science fiction absurdity of it all settled into something comfortable. In a place filled with blinking panels, gravity schedules, and emergency protocols written for disasters that hadn't happened yet, these notes felt like proof that something gentle could still exist between bulkheads. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know why she chose me. But every night, when the artificial dusk flickered, I found myself listening for footsteps that never came, and smiling at a folded piece of paper that somehow made the universe feel a little less vast. By the second week, the station had begun to anticipate the notes before I did. Doors slid open a fraction slower near my quarters, as if curious. The wall panel outside my room developed a habit of blinking whenever I reached for the handle, like it wanted to be included. Even the kettle, traitorous machine, had started boiling on the first attempt, which I suspected was less cooperation and more intimidation from an unseen observer. The notes grew bolder in content, but not in confidence. They still arrived folded too carefully, placed just off-center from my door as if whoever delivered them worried about symmetry, but didn't trust herself to correct it. One night's note began with, "I have learned that humans do not actually explode when embarrassed. This is reassuring." And I had to sit down on the floor to finish reading it because laughing upright felt dangerous. She asked questions now. Careful ones, questions wrapped in unnecessary disclaimers. Why humans named ships after emotions. Why we pretended to enjoy social gatherings while clearly counting minutes. Why we claimed to be fine when our tones suggested we were negotiating with despair. I answered honestly, which was easier on paper than it ever was out loud. In return, she shared fragments of her own world without naming it. She wrote about corridors that were always too quiet, about being followed by people who pretended not to follow her, about schedules that were decided before she woke up and applauded when she obeyed them. Once, she wrote, "There are rooms I am not allowed to enter alone, which is strange, because I am always alone anyway." I underlined that sentence 3 times before writing back, then crossed out everything I wrote and replaced it with a joke about humans needing permission to enter their own refrigerators emotionally. Her humor sharpened after that, dry, observational, slightly dangerous. She began teasing me about my routines, about how I pretended not to wait by the door at night. I denied it in writing, which she immediately called a lie. One note simply said, "You stood there for 7 seconds too long. That is waiting." I accused her of spying, and she responded, "Observation is not spying if done politely." I asked her once why she didn't just send messages through the station network like everyone else. The reply arrived late that night. The paper creased in a way it never was before. "Written words cannot be intercepted by systems that believe they know better," she wrote. "Also, I like how human paper smells." I didn't ask how she knew what paper smelled like. Some mysteries felt safer left intact. Stranger things began to happen. Security patrols changed routes. Announcements paused mid-sentence when I walked past. Once, a holographic directory glitched and displayed a crown icon before correcting itself. When I mentioned it in a note, joking that the station seemed nervous lately, her response came quickly. "It is probably nothing," she wrote. Then, in smaller letters beneath it, "I am very good at probably nothing." That was the night I first suspected who she might be. Not fully. Just enough for the idea to sit beside me, legs dangling, making rude comments. An alien, certainly. Shy, definitely. But royalty. That felt excessive, like assuming someone was a comet when they might just be debris with ambition. Still, the clues stacked themselves neatly. The guarded schedules, the watchers, the way she spoke about duty as if it were gravity. I decided not to push. If she wanted me to know, she would tell me, or accidentally imply it while making a joke about ceremonial obligations, which she did 2 nights later. "I attended a formal gathering," her note said. There were 12 speeches, none of which said anything. I smiled until my face hurt. If this is leadership, I believe it is a medical condition. I wrote back that humans elected leaders who specialized in saying nothing loudly, and that smiling until pain was considered experience. I added a drawing of a stick figure wearing a crown and tripping over it. The next night's note had ink smudges, like she'd laughed too hard before it dried. Despite everything, we still didn't meet. The distance remained, careful and deliberate. But the connection deepened, word by word, joke by joke. In a station built to survive the vacuum, something fragile was growing, folded neatly each night, waiting patiently outside my door. The night everything changed, there was no note. I waited longer than usual, long enough for the station's artificial dusk to cycle twice, long enough for the wall panel to blink at me in what I had come to recognize as concern. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself she was busy attending one of her very boring, very ceremonial gatherings, where people spoke for hours without committing to verbs. I even told the kettle, which boiled obediently and therefore could not be trusted. When the note still didn't appear, I felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest, not panic exactly, but the absence of expectation, which turned out to be worse. I went asleep without smiling, which should have triggered an emergency protocol somewhere. The station woke me in the middle of the night with a soft chime and a message that didn't come through any screen. It came through the door. "Please don't be alarmed," her voice said, muffled and very close. "If you are alarmed, please know that I am significantly more alarmed." I opened the door. She stood there holding a folded piece of paper like a shield, blue hair, catching the corridor light in a way that made the station dim respectfully. Her skin was pale, almost luminous, and her long ears curved back slightly, as if trying not to draw attention to themselves. She looked like someone who had practiced this moment 1,000 times and still gotten everything wrong. "I brought the note myself," she said quickly. "This is not a violation, technically." I stared, then laughed, because apparently that was how my body processed revelations involving alien royalty. "You're real," I said helpfully. She relaxed a fraction. "Yes, that is a common conclusion." She stepped inside, glancing around as if expecting hidden observers to leap out of my furniture. "I won't stay long," she said. "People will notice. They already notice too much." I wanted to explain, before they decide explanation is unnecessary. She handed me the note. It was blank. "I ran out of words," she said, mortified. "That has never happened before." We sat, not close but not far. The station hummed, pretending not to record history. She told me who she was without titles at first, then sighed and added them anyway, like an apology. A princess, yes. Not by ambition, but by birth and relentless paperwork. She told me about watching humans from afar, about how my ordinary routines had seemed like freedom, about how leaving notes had been the only rebellion quiet enough to survive. "I didn't mean to involve you," she said, "but you wrote back. That was very rude of you." "I'm known for that," I said. We laughed and the tension cracked, spilling something warmer into the room. She stayed longer than planned. So did I. When she finally left, it was with no watchers, no alarms, just a promise folded neatly between us. The notes stopped after that, not because the connection ended, but because it no longer needed paper. We met when we could, spoke when it was safe, joked when it was. She still teased me about my size. I still teased her about leadership as a medical condition. The station adjusted, as stations do, accommodating something unexpected. I changed. I noticed it slowly. I stopped waiting by the door and started opening it. I spoke more. I laughed louder. I learned that connection didn't have to be loud to be real, but it did.